13, and we're up on 14. Now the question is, are you with the Daily Manna reading? And the answer, of course, is yes, Pastor, we're doing quite well. In fact, I'm a little ahead. Anyway, it's good stuff. Genesis is always an interesting book. If you haven't read it for a while, then it's really good to look back on how things started and see what God did to bring the nation of Israel together and to start populating the earth. So anyway, as we look at chapter 14, there was the beginning of this was kind of a sad moment because John the Baptist was so dear to Jesus. You know, he's the one that came, prepared the way, as the scriptures had foretold before about him coming to, and it's kind of like I was just thinking of what an example was like, and there's really not a good example of that in the Old Testament as far as that goes, but I was thinking that as you realize that you're having somebody come up, and then like Elijah and Elisha, those two came up, and then Paul and Timothy. Paul had a lot of different cohorts, guys that partnered with him, whether it was Timothy or whether it was just a number of different guys. Even John Mark, he was there and got sideways with Paul and then ended up being a good buddy with Paul in the end. And you're like, well, what happened? Well, evidently John Mark kind of deserted Paul about halfway through that particular trip, and that made Paul a little upset. So Paul said, I don't want him to go with me on my next trip. And so I believe Silas or somebody took him, and after a while he proved himself again, proved himself to be that type of a good right-hand man for whoever the lead person was. And so at the end, Paul was very, very good with telling how he had done great things for the kingdom. And so he earned back his reputation of being a quitter and somebody who left him in the lurch to being a guy that really was very helpful. Well, as John the Baptist was saying what he did, and he would continually remind Herod and the household there that it was not to be done what he was doing. He had put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, the brother Philip's wife, because John had been saying to him, it is not lawful for you to have her. And though he wanted to put him to death, he feared the people, because the people loved John the Baptist, even in the household there, and knew that John the Baptist spoke truth. And everybody's like, yeah, you're speaking truth. We know it's the truth. But Herod and his wife, Herodias, didn't like it because they knew they were doing wrong. And so they ended up having a birthday party, Herod did, and the daughter of Herodias danced before them, pleased Herod, and he promised to give her whatever she wanted. And guess what? Mama wants John the Baptist's head. And so off it went. And then the disciples came, and I always wondered whether or not they got the head back or not. It says that they came for the body, and I wondered if they were able to put the head with the body. Anyway, that's just me thinking. I'm like, I wonder what happened to the rest of him. But he was killed in that way, a martyr's death, if you will, because he was preaching and talking about repentance of Herod and Herodias. You guys need to repent. And so that took care of that. And then Jesus is now, as far as preaching going, he's the main guy for the next whatever length of time he's left. A couple years, maybe a year and a half. He's getting more towards the middle part of when he was on the earth in his ministry years. And so this one is one of the examples on this next part where all of the Gospels talk about it. And it is the feeding of the 5,000. Now, as Jesus was talking to the disciples, and the disciples are like, well, how can we pay for that? We don't have that kind of money, and we're in a desolate area. How in the world can we afford to take care of? So how many were there? 5,000 men. And then how many women? 5,000, maybe. I mean, who knows? Maybe all of them weren't married, but who knows? There's probably some. Then you add the kids to it. So how many kids were there too? Have a couple kids per for each one. So we'll say times 5,000, so probably closer to 20,000 people as you think about it. And it's probably even more than that. Now, how many fishes and how many loaves are going to take to fill and feed 20,000 people? 20 to 30,000 probably. How many fish do you eat? I don't know. Might one.
2 pounds per person when you have a fish fry.
2 pounds per person on the old fish fry. And so the disciples are like, what is going to happen here? We don't get it. I mean, they're like going into this going, yeah, this isn't going to work. Lord, do you know the math here? Okay. 5 and 2, they don't add up to 20,000 plus. And Jesus said, I'm going to bless it, and you guys start taking up the food and passing it out. And then how many baskets were left over after all the people ate? 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. And those were there, obviously, were 5,000 men. So that was a miracle that had never been done before that we know of. And I always like the ones that have never been done before, because it just shows the power and the scope and the ability of Christ to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants to do it, according to the need. There was a need there. The people needed to be fed. They were probably really hungry and tired, and they needed something to pep them up. And it's always good to have some food in you when you're listening to somebody, because you can actually have some energy to listen. And so that was a great thing. And so Jesus dismissed the crowd, and then they went to wherever they're going to go. Obviously, the disciples got in the boat, and then they started making their way across the sea. Now, God obviously has power over the sea. We've heard of that before, but you realize that, was he making the wind be against them? Well, who stirs up the wind? Well, you got two choices really. Is it God or is it the Satan? I mean, who knows? Satan has his ability to control the elements when God gives him permission to do so. But as you think about it, was it important to the next thing that happened? Well, of course it was. It was something about they were trying to get across the sea, and it's a matter of they would have gotten across the sea probably a little quicker had there not been a wind against them. So this wind was keeping them from getting all the way to the other side. Why would that be the case? Well, Jesus had something in mind here, and walking on the water was the main thing. Now, I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, there's probably some movies out there that show Jesus walking on the water and that kind of thing. I always think about this one commercial where this one guy's, I don't know what he's advertising, but he's walking across the swimming pool. And you're like, okay, that kind of reminds me of Jesus walking on the water. It's a little bit calmer, tamer version of it. But you realize that, God can do anything. Jesus certainly can do anything. And that was quite a walk, if you think about it, from where they had started out at to all the way somewhere. It was near the other side, but it wasn't all the way to the other side. But he'd walked all the way across, and they were, it says here, terrified. When they saw this being, this man on the water, and they said, what? It is a ghost. So did they believe in ghosts at that particular time in their? Yes, they did. Ghosts have been around. Demons have been around. Satan has been around. And so you realize that they believed in ghosts because obviously there was that going on. And so what did they do? They said, ho-hum, no big deal. No. They cried out in fear. But immediately, as soon as they cried out in fear, Jesus was trying to calm their fears. He said, take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. And so they're like, oh, okay, it's Jesus. We're in good shape. And Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, and he was still trying to figure it out, but who else is going to be walking across the water and saying that but Jesus? command me to come to you on the water. He said, come. So Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came to Jesus. Now I was kind of wondering, how many steps do you think he took before he started sinking? 3 or 4? 5 or 6? 1 or 2? Who knows? We don't know how far he went, but it was a few. I mean, he was realizing he was actually, yeah, okay, I can do this. You know, I'm heading towards Jesus. And then as soon as he saw the wind, he was afraid. And what happened? He began to sink, and he cried out. And this is the second cry. He cried out earlier because he's afraid, just like the other guys. And now he's crying out again because he's what? Afraid again. Peter doesn't learn very well. He just doesn't. He tends to do things at the spur of the moment, and then he gets afraid and kind of shrinks back. What did he do when he denied Jesus? What happened before? Oh yeah, I'll follow you. I will follow you wherever you go, whatever you do. And what happens? The very first chance that he has to deny Jesus, what does he do? He denies Jesus, shrinks back. Oh no, I don't know that guy. I'm not a part of them. Yes, you are. Quit lying, Peter. And so, as Jesus saw this, and I'm sure he already foresaw that Peter wasn't going to make it all the way to him, but what did Peter say? Lord, save me. Save me. Come on. Jesus immediately reached out his hand, so he must not have been too far from Jesus if he just reached out his hand and pulled him up, took hold of him, saying, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Wow. That in itself is amazing. And they were like, oh, who is this guy? He is truly the Lord himself. And so those in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. Now what would you have been saying at that same point? Probably the same thing, right? When you see the wind stop, and when you see Jesus doing a miracle of allowing, somebody to come to him on the water, and Jesus is on the water, he was never propped up by anything. He just was still on the water because he had perfect faith. He had the faith that he needed to have to be able to show whoever else that he was in control of what's going on. Him and the Father were talking continually about this. And so that was a great example, and it's an example for us today. And I've heard many a sermon on, as soon as you take your eyes off of Jesus, what are you going to do? Start sinking. You're going down is what happens. And so many people get excited, and they basically love to talk about Jesus, and they can't wait to do things for Jesus. And then something happens in their life. Satan kind of throws some darts at them, and all of a sudden those darts hit, and those darts don't feel good. So what do? They start taking their eyes off of the things of God. They start taking their eyes off of Jesus, and then they start going downhill quickly. Now, do you know anybody in your life that has gone down quickly because they took their eyes off of Jesus? Well, I had many of them through the years, and it's a sad thing. So what are we supposed to do when we see that happening? Well, we're supposed to, first of all, no, that's second. Close though. Pray. You're supposed to pray for them. Pray for them, and then restore them, and try to restore them. Now we can ask them, hey, is there something I can do? Is there some way that we can help you to get back in church? Maybe have this relationship with Christ that you thought you had, and then you really don't, and you need it. And so there are different ways of dealing with the person, but you must engage them. And we've talked a little bit about the engaging part, is that we need to go to them in a spirit of love and kindness and gentleness, and make sure that they know we care about them. Why do a lot of people not come back to church? They don't let them know they're missed. And when they do come back, what's going to happen? Where have you been? what is going on with you? So, I mean, all this load of heaping of guilt and, oh, I'm sorry, I got to, really try to explain myself and why am I not in church? Yeah, well, the guy in K-Love, I like listening to K-Love, this music. He's been talking about that lately because on the 21st of September is Back to Church Day. Do you know that? That was an official Back to Church Day. Well, you know now. So anyway, I get to hear the commercials, and he talks a lot about it, and they're talking about different people that have gotten away from the Lord and why and all those kind of things, and describing how it's easy to get out of the habit and that kind of thing. But you realize that these people, many of them have come to know the Lord, and they just need, and the statistic that he brought out is that I think it was 90%, wasn't it 90% of the people who were asked said that they would come to church if somebody asked them. But how many people had asked them? Only 5%. So that leaves 85% of the people who would come to church or said they would come to church in this poll that they had taken would actually come, but they have to be asked by somebody. Now, it's kind of funny because you assume, and I even assume at Conway Christian, that all of these kids go to church somewhere, all right? And I was asking this one class, and it was like 8th graders or something, and I said, now, what church do you go to? And these two girls said, oh, yeah, I go to, whatever, Friendship Baptist or Second Baptist or some other church. And I thought, okay. And this other girl didn't say anything. And I said, now, where do you go to Baptist or church? What Baptist church do you go to? Well, they're not all Baptists. There's the other ones. But she said, I don't go to church right now. I said, oh, okay. I said, guess what? And I had my brand new Brumley Baptist Church card with me. And I said, here you go. Here's a great church for you to go to. And you know where we're at? I think so. Everybody knows where Axiom is. So I said, well, we're with the one right behind Axiom, the white church, the steeple. Yeah, I know where that's at. So I didn't see her last Sunday, but you never know. If I see her again and I'm in her class, I'll keep reminding her as well as the rest of the classes. And I invite different kids, if they don't have a church home, come over. Even if they're having a rough time with their church home, I'd say, hey, we got a place down the road from you guys, and we'd love to have you, but I'm not trying to proselytize. I'm not trying to steal members from other churches, even though it'd be nice to have some kids here that would be able to, bolster our youth group as well as our children's group. Anyway, so you realize that folks are out there, and we just need to invite them to be able to come to our church. Now, moving on. I could be on that for a while, but I need to move on. Okay, verse 34. And they crossed over Gennesaret. Yeah. And when the people recognized them, they sent all around to that region and brought to him all who were sick and implored him that they might only touch the fringe of his garment. And as many as touched it were made well. All they had to do was touch. But you know what? That's an act of faith. Where you kind of go, yeah, it's not a big deal. What about the lady who touched his robe or whatever, and Jesus felt something going out of him? What was that? That was the power of God right there, just because you touched that garment. Well, and some of them didn't have to have. I mean, the centurion said, I don't need to have anything touched. You just say the word, and that person will be healed. My daughter, my servant, whoever that is that they're having them to be healed. And Jesus was like, wow. Somebody with that kind of faith that I just have to say the word and you believe it. It doesn't have to be corresponding by putting your hands on them or putting mud in their eye or whatever it is that he requires of them. He is saying all you need to do is believe in me, and that's what he did. Now, as he moves on past his healing time, as we look at it, he gets after the Pharisees and the scribes because the Pharisees were concerned about the disciples. They're always watching. What can I do to accuse you and to make you look bad and make your disciples look like they're not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, like they were not fasting as they should have, according to the Pharisees? And Jesus gave a good answer. No reason to fast while you have the Messiah with you. There's no reason for that. Now, he also said, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat. Sounds like my wife. Go wash your hands. Everybody's wanting to. It's a good idea to wash your hands. I mean, especially with COVID stuff flying around, maybe that'll take care of some of that and keep you from having it. And then Jesus comes right back against them and saying about how they dishonor their father and mother because of how they misappropriate funds and do things for themselves to gain from what money has been given as opposed to giving it to the proper people. And so they're not honoring their father and mother. And it says, I like this, you hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you when he said, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commands or commandments of men. And so the Pharisees were really good at that. They were experts in the law because they're the ones making it up. What can we do? It sounds like our legislature and government, doesn't it? They're going to make up a new law for whatever. So long as they can get something that people will say, you're a great politician. They were wanting the same thing, except in the religious world, and that's when Jesus jumped on them. And I like this part. He says, what defiles a person? It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth. Now this defiles a person. And then the disciples are saying, did you know that the Pharisees were offended when you heard this? Then they heard this saying, and I love this response. Every plant that my Heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up. Let them alone. They are blind guides. And if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. But Peter said, explain the parable. And it's like, Peter, come on. Don't you understand this? It's what is said that is what is defiling you. That's what's making people know different things about you. Not whether you washed your hands or what you even eat. It's a matter of how you speak and how you show your faith in the Lord as opposed to doing the things that you're doing, which is trying to catch the Lord in some type of problem or situation where he's saying something that they can use against him. And he says, what is important is what comes out of your mouth. In the book of James, and there's several places in Scripture that talk about how important it is for people to know that your heart is right. Because he says here, for out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. And he was basically guiding those things that he was saying straight against the Pharisees. Did they have evil thoughts? No doubt. They were trying to find something to pin on him so they could kill him. Did they murder? Well, they're getting ready to murder. So they have murdered other people who have followed the way in that. Adultery, of course, we know that Herod did that. Sexual immorality, well, a lot of them did sexual immorality. There were temple prostitutes and things of that nature that were said, okay, sure, go ahead and do that. We don't mind because it doesn't bother us a bit. We kind of like it. And then theft, there were people that always stole. Certainly tax collectors were known for that. And then here's the last part that was definitely right against them. False witness and slander. They were doing both against Christ. And Jesus knew that they were doing it. They were conspiring against him. And so he says, you know what? What you eat is really not that important, especially with unwashed hands. But it doesn't defile you, but your mouth does. Wow. So as you think about it, he put them in their place. And I like the part he says, did you know that they were offended by what you said? And Jesus said, I hope so. I hope that they were offended, and I hope that they'll keep being offended so that they'll get right with the God the Father by worshiping Jesus. Now, this is kind of an interesting one about the faith of a Canaanite woman. And it sounds like Jesus is being kind of mean, all right? And we don't ever think of Jesus as being mean except maybe towards the Pharisees. Well, this woman, she was from Canaan, obviously, and she was crying out, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and begged him. They didn't just say, yeah, could you do that? They were begging him, saying, send her away, for she is crying out after us. And then he says, I was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But she came and humbled herself. We're going to talk about humbling on Sunday morning, coming from Philippians 2. It's talking about Jesus and the way he was humbled. And anyway, she humbled herself and knelt before him, saying, Lord, help me. And then he comes back at her again. It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs, because that's the way they thought about with the Canaanites and the Samaritans and some of these different folks that were around there were thought of as they were not people who worshiped God. And she said very wisely, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Wow. So she's not saying, well, we deserve it too. She wasn't trying to act like she's up here and over the Israelites. And Israelites obviously were God's chosen people, and he knew that. And she, I'm sure, knew it as well. But she said, but I need you too. You know, and that's the part that I really think is neat, is that she humbled herself to saying, you know, I know that I'm not in the same category as the Israelites and the Jews, but I need you too. And Jesus heard that, and he says, then he answered her, O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire. And her daughter was healed instantly. Wow. And I just thought, that is so awesome that he recognized her faith. And the question, as we were looking earlier, you know, Peter was demonstrating his faith for a very short time. I'm going to get out of that boat. I'm going to walk a few steps. And as soon as I walk a few steps, then boom, there goes my faith straight into the water. I'm going to be scared, and I am not going to do the things that I should do. And that means walk all the way to Jesus, hold his hand on top of the water, not slipping into the water, but doing exactly the way Jesus wanted him to do, and that show that great faith. He had that opportunity. He even saw himself walking on the water. He realized he was doing something that was supernatural because of Jesus. And yet, he couldn't even keep his faith for a short time. And he has done that many times. I mean, as you look at Peter, he made mistake after mistake after mistake. And then we'll talk about it later, about him being called what? The Rock. I'm like, Peter, the Rock? Really? For how long? You know, till the first wave hits him and then he gets blown away. But as you think about it, and I always think that this is what the turning point was for Peter, is that when Jesus was resurrected from the dead, then Peter started really believing, okay, I see what you did. I know now for sure that you are the Son of God. Even though I said you were the Son of God earlier, I truly believe it now. And I'm willing to die for that, as well as the rest of the disciples. Yes, I seen Jesus. The resurrection means it all. And it gave them all of the desire and the help to be able to live the life that they needed to live. Now, Jesus heals many. He heals everywhere he went. on the mountain next to him. He healed the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and put them at his feet. And he healed every one of them that was near him that he could heal, that they asked him about. They saw the mute speaking, the crippled healthy, the lame walking, and the blind seeing. And they glorified the God of Israel. Wow. Good for them, because that's exactly what they needed to do. Glorify God and Jesus, because they're one and the same. And then we talk about the feeding of the 4,000. And obviously at this point, the disciples had already seen this before. And they said, well, how many loaves do you have this time? 7, and a few small fish. And so he took the fish and he took the loaves and then broke bread. And this one thing I was going to ask you guys about. Speaking about breaking bread, we've only had the Lord's Supper one time since I've been here. That's too long. So anyway, we're going to do you guys usually do the Lord's Supper on Christmas Eve? On a Christmas Eve service? Yes, no, not sure? Everybody's thinking about it? No? Candlelight service, but it's not really a Lord's Supper service too? Can it be? I'm asking Angie, and whether the rest of you is like, Angie, what do you think? What do you guys think? Do you think that's what I've done in other churches, and that's always a really special Lord's Supper type of thing, and we sing hymns and we sing songs, and we have Silent Night as the last song with the candlelight and all of that, and so just thought I'd throw that out there. But that's then, okay? That's what, 3.5 months away. We need to have it here within the next few weeks. Which week is the best? I was kind of waiting for COVID to go away, so we could have that. So we could maybe everybody kind of be safe about. Have you ever used one of those individual things where you have the little bread thing on the top and on top? Yeah, you've done that? I don't know if you want to do that again or whether you want to do the regular picking the bread out of the plate.
It's usually hard for the older folks to open,
Yeah, to get it open.
get them open.
They are a little more challenging.
Yeah.
So, but are we safe with doing it the other way, just the regular way we've always done it? I'm just taking that, and because everybody, as soon as some COVID thing hits, it's all of a sudden, oh, let's not have church anymore. Let's not do anything. I mean, so we are thinking about something that you might take a little bit of risk because somebody's handled that plate already, but.
When we need to do it is when COVID and everything starts hitting, we need more of it.
Yeah, that's true. So, anyway, think about that. Whatever we need to do to make it happen. We're not going to do it this Sunday, obviously. And the next Sunday is the 21st, I believe, right? So I'm kind of saying maybe the 28th of September might be a good day for that. Does that sound all right? Okay, let's think about that. That's something that some people will come to, and they won't come to church and just naturally. I got to have something special. Let's do the Lord's Supper. Okay, maybe you'll come for that. All right? But I'm just hoping that is a good thing for everybody to come and be a part of. All right, so that was the feeding of the 4,000. The one thing that the Pharisees and the Sadducees continued to do was to demand a sign. What kind of sign did they want? Well, something that was supernatural. They want to see something that they don't usually see. And so I don't know where they've been, because the fact, if they were around him at all, they saw people getting healed all the time. And of course, they weren't in the boat seeing the wind stop, and seeing Jesus walk on the water. But there were a lot of signs. But when they demanded it, Jesus says, those people demand signs. Guess what? They're not going to get any, because I'm not doing it for you guys, because you already know who I am. And all you're going to do is say, oh, you did that on the wrong day. You did that on the Sabbath. And so they're going to use that against him for healing a person of a lifelong illness or anything going on. He was doing that at the wrong time, according to them. So here's the part about Peter confessing Jesus. Now this is chapter 16, verse 13. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." And he said to them, "But what do you say that I am?" Who do you say I am? Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And what you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." Then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ, because he was trying to keep it a little bit on the down low at this point, because it's getting closer to the time where he needs to do things. And then as he talks about it, what's he do? He tells them again that the Son of Man will go to Jerusalem, suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And this is where Peter, who just about got called the "you are blessed" person, Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "Far be it from you, Lord. This shall never happen to you." But he turned and said to Peter, Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." Wow. Boy, you talk about a turnaround. We talked about that a minute ago. He's getting ready to go. "I'll do anything for you, Christ. I'll go to death for you. I'll be, this super, supportive guy for you as a disciple." And then he denies him 3 times. Well, what's he do here? You just got called blessed by Jesus, and that God had revealed truth to you. Wow. You're going to be the rock on which the church is going to be established. And then what's Peter? "You can't have that happen to you, Lord." And Jesus said, "Oh yeah? Get behind me, Satan, because you are a hindrance." Wow. I don't ever, and I hope that you don't as well, ever want to be called a hindrance to the things of God. Wow. That's like stabbing you in the heart. I'm a hindrance to God's way? No, I don't want to be that way. Well, you're wondering what Jesus thought about discipleship and what does it mean? Verse 24. Then Jesus told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." So he is trying to encourage them, but he's also saying, if you're not following him, Jesus, then you're following Satan. And what if you had the whole world, like the rich young ruler? You have everything, and then yet you're not following Christ. What good does that do you? Does you no good. The things of this earth fade away. They're temporary things. The spiritual things, the things of God, they're what last. Those are the things that you're going to have forever. And you need to, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow Christ. That's the key to salvation. And so, as he knows these things, he's trying to kind of drill them into the heads of these disciples. Okay, guys, this is what's going to save you, not whatever the world's telling you. And so you need to follow Christ. So that is 14, 15, and 16 where we've talked about. And it is time to do our prayer requests. Of course, I don't have a piece of paper that I'll just write it down on one of these. That'll work.